Today we are discussing about CSS Box Model. Understanding the CSS Box Model, that is a topic name. The box model defines the space between the content of an element and its border, also border and margin, etc. The space between border and margin, etc. The amount of space between the content of an element and its border, that is known as padding, that can be specified, as well as the space between the border and an adjacent element is known as margin. So the spacing of padding and margin, that is defined in box model. So altogether this model is called box model. You can see a small diagram representing the content, its height and width is specified inside a particular cell. So when we compare with another element, so there will be some separation, space separation. So that is margin, and border will be there, padding space will be there. Okay, all these are defined in box model. Border, first we will be discussing borders. Every element has the border style property, which controls whether the element's content has a border and also specifies the style of the border. Cascading style sheets provide several different border styles, among them dotted, dashed, solid, and double. The default value for border style is none. There will not be any border style, which is why the content of elements normally do not have borders. The style of one particular side of an element can be set with border top style, border bottom style, border left style, border right style. So all these are some of the property values for setting the side of an element. For example, you need to set a border style for the top area. You need to specify border hyphen top hyphen style. That is a property name. For example, you need to set a bottom style for an element. We have to specify border hyphen bottom hyphen style property along with its value. Similarly, for left side and right side, there are different properties: border hyphen left style and border hyphen right style. These are the two properties for left and right respectively. The border width property is used to specify the thickness of a border. It is possible values are thin, medium, that is the default value, medium is the default value, thin, medium, thick, or a length value which is in pixel. You can either specify border hyphen width is equal to 2px or 5px, etc. in pixel. Setting border width sets the thickness of all four sides of an element. The width of one particular border of an element can be specified with border hyphen top hyphen width or border hyphen bottom hyphen width or border left width or border right width properties. Now we will see the color of a border is controlled by border hyphen color property. The individual borders of an element can be colored differently through the properties border top color, border bottom color, border left color, or border right color. These are some of the properties for setting the color, border color property. Either you can specify a separate color for top or bottom or left or right sides. One example is given here: border colon 5px solid blue. So it's a shortcut method. This is equivalent to the following: border underscore width, that is 5px, border hyphen width, that is 5px, border style, that is solid, border color, that is given a value blue. The cells of a table can have borders like this: TD and TH, border colon thin, solid, black. So that means TD table data and TH table header. These are the two selectors. Table data and table header selectors are used here. These are elements or tags, table tags. And the border is set with three different values, that is thin, solid and black. That means border width is thin, border style is solid and border color is black. In many cases we want just border between table cells rather than the default double borders that result from this specification. Example, the right border of a cell and left border of its neighbor cell to the right together form a double border. To get just one border between table cells, we set the table property border hyphen collapse to collapse. Its default value is separate. So this is how border table cells are specified using border collapse property for collapsing. Its default value is separate actually. Now we will be moving on to margins and padding. Margins and padding. Padding is the space between the content of an element and its border. The margin is the space between the border of an element and its neighbors. When there is no border, the margin plus the padding is the space between the content of an element and its neighbors. In this scenario, it may appear that there is no difference between padding and margins. However, there is a difference when the element has a background. The background extends into the padding, but not into the margin. The margin properties are named margin, which applies to all four sides of an element. Margin hyphen left, margin hyphen right, margin hyphen top, margin hyphen bottom. These are the four different properties of margin. All the margin properties can have the following values: auto, length, or a specified value in percentage, or inherited value. Auto, the browser calculates the margin. That means it's a default value. Browser default values are specified. Otherwise, you can specify the length, specifies a margin in pixel, point, centimeter, etc. You can explicitly set a particular value for length property. Percentage specifies a margin in percentage. Modular symbol is used there. Percentage of the width of the containing element. Inherit specifies that the margin should be inherited from the parent element. So these are the possible values for margin properties. Auto, that is a browser calculated value or browser default value. Length, another property that specifies a margin in pixel, point or centimeter, that is an explicit value given by the user. Percentage, another value that specifies a margin in percentage of the width of the containing element. And the last property value is inherit, that specifies the margin should be inherited from the parent element. One example is given here. It's a shorthand method. To shorten the code, it is possible to specify all the margin properties in one property. Margin, that is a property name here. We have chosen P, or we chose the value P here, that is a selector. P is the element, paragraph element, followed by margin colon 100px, 150px, 100px, 80px. So the length value is specified in pixel here. If the margin property has four values, for example, margin colon 25px, 50px, 75px, 100px, then first value is assigned to the top margin, second value is assigned to the right margin, third value is assigned to the bottom margin, and last value, fourth value, is assigned to the left margin. So here top margin is 25 pixel, right margin is 50 pixel, bottom margin is 75 pixel, left margin is 100 pixel. Likewise it will be assigned. If the margin property has three values like For example, margin 25px, 50px, 75px. Listen, all the three different values are separated using a single space. 25 pixel, then a space, then 50px, then a space, 75px. Okay, that is a separation here, followed by a semicolon. Here, top margin is 25. Then second value 50px is assigned to right and left margins. So right and left margins are 50px. Then bottom margin is 75px. Likewise, the definition goes, the margin definition goes. If the margin property has two values, margin colon 25px and 50px, top and bottom margins are 25px, right and left margins are assigned with the second value, that is 50px. If the margin property has only one value, then all four margins are given the same length property value. So margin colon 25px, all four margins are for 25px in size. So this is how margins works. Now CSS padding. So here CSS padding properties are used to generate space around the content. So padding means the space around the content. The padding clears an area around the content inside the border of an element. There are CSS properties for setting padding for each side of an element, top, right, bottom and left. The properties are padding hyphen top, padding hyphen right, padding hyphen bottom and padding hyphen left. And the values, the all the padding properties can have the following values, that is length, percentage, inherit. Okay, so length specifies a padding in pixel, point or cm, centimeter. Percentage specifies a padding in percentage of the width of the containing element. Inherit specifies that the padding inherited from the parent element. We will see some examples here. See, for a paragraph element, P is the selector there, padding hyphen top colon 50px, padding hyphen right colon 30px, padding hyphen bottom colon 50px, padding hyphen left colon 80px. So these are the four different top, right, bottom and left values are given. The padding property is a shorthand property for the following individual padding properties. That is, for top, right, bottom and left padding properties are given as P inside curly bracket padding colon 50px, 30px, 50px, 80px. So the first value is assigned to the top padding, second value to be gone to the right padding value, third value is for bottom value, and the fourth value is for padding left. We will see some examples, other some examples. If the padding property has four values, the top padding will be given the first value, right padding will be given the second value, bottom padding will be given third value, and the fourth value is assigned to left padding. In our example, padding colon 25px, 50px, 75px, 100px, top is given 25px, right value is given 50px, bottom padding value is given 75 and left padding is given 100px. And down to that example, if the padding property has three values, padding colon 25, 50 and 75px respectively, top padding is given 25px, that is the first value. Second value is given to right and left padding values. Bottom padding is giving the third value. If the padding property has two values, then the first value given to top and bottom padding properties. Second value is given to right and left padding values. If the padding property has one value, padding 25px for example here, all four padding property values are 25px each. So this is how padding works. We have another property, that is position property. The CSS position property, this is an important concept. The position property specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. There are five different position values: static, relative, fixed, absolute and sticky. So the elements are then positioned using top, bottom, left and right properties. However, these properties will not work unless the position property is set first. So suppose we need to work these particular position property, we need to specify these properties first. They also work differently depending on the position value. We will see in some examples how these position values are set. So for any style, we need to first specify the position property. Position static. So there are different properties and values: static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. So here first position value is static. We will see the position static here. So HTML elements are positioned by default, that is static is a default value. HTML elements are positioned static by default. Static positioned elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, and right properties. An element with position static is not positioned in any special way. It is always positioned according to the normal flow of the page. So this is a default positioning property static. There is no special effect for static positioning. One example is given here. The div element has position static. Explicitly position colon static value is given here. In our example, div dot static, a class is specified here. Static is the class name, and the position value is specified to static, and border is a shorthand method is given here. Border 3px solid, a color code is specified #73ad21. That is a color code there. The next thing is position relative. Second position value is relative. An element with position relative is positioned relative to its normal position. So some relationship between the position and some elements are there. Setting the top, right, bottom, and left properties of a relatively positioned element will cause it to be adjusted away from its normal position. Other content will not be adjusted to fit into any gap left by the element. Here also in our example, div element has used with a position relative. Div dot relative, position relative, left 30px, border 3px solid, and a color code is specified. So this is how the position relative is defined. Position fixed, that is a third position property value that is fixed. An element with position is fixed is positioned relative to the viewport, which means it always stays in the same place where it is defined. Even if the page is scrolled up or down, the position of the fixed element will not be changed. The top, right, bottom, and left properties are used to position the element. A fixed element does not leave a gap in the page where it would normally have been located. In our example, the fixed element in the lower right corner of the page is given as div dot fixed, position colon fixed, bottom 0, right 0. So bottom and right 0 0 position is used here. Bottom and right x and y coordinate 0 and 0. That means bottom right. So bottom space, bottom area, and the right positioning is specified here. So bottom 0, right 0. 0 0 positioning is given there. For suppose one coordinate position is there, then that will be 0 0. And the width is specified as 300px. Border is set. Border property values are given as a shorthand method 3px solid, and a color code is there. So it's a fixed positioning at the bottom right side. The next thing is absolute positioning. Position colon absolute. An element with position absolute is positioned relative to the nearest positioned ancestor, instead of positioned relative to the viewport like fixed. So this is relative to the nearest positioned ancestor. However, If an absolute positioned element has no positioned ancestors, it uses the document body and moves along with the page, scrolling up or down. A positioned element is one whose position is anything except static. Here, examples are given with respect to div element. So div dot relative and div dot absolute is specified. Relative is already we have discussed here, and the div dot absolute is position absolute, top 80 px, right 0, width 200 px, height 100 px, border 3 px, solid 73AD21. So this will be positioned relative to its ancestor. For example, div dot relative is specified, and after that div dot absolute is specifying, then relative to the positioning of the ancestor, the div dot absolute will work. Position sticky. An element with position sticky is positioned based on the user's scroll position. A sticky element toggles between relative and fixed depending on the scroll position. It will not disappear from the viewport. Even if we scroll down or scroll up continuously, it will not leave the viewport. It will be visible either on the right or left or top or bottom. It will not leave the screen. It is positioned relative until a given offset position is met in the viewport. Then it sticks in place like position fixed. The usage is div.sticky. A sticky class is specified for div element. Position WebKit sticky, that we will be using a particular Safari font family. Then position sticky is specified, top 0, background color green, border 2px, solid, hash for CAF50. So this is a usage. You just simply copy this code and try executing your program. You will get a particular sticky positioned element. Thank you.